Mount Hood Region Young Life. We're excited to be with you today. As a part of our time together, we wanted to have a Q&A panel. We have emailed out a link and you guys have responded with some questions, and we're going to take some time, our illustrious panel here, we're going to take some time this morning to answer some of your questions. So my name is Nate Emhoff. I am from West Lynn and I'm on regional staff.
And my name is Wayne Patterson, and I'm from Wilsonville, and I'm on regional staff.
I'm Erin Olinger from Tigard, Oregon, and I'm the Regional Initiatives Coordinator.
I'm Matt Marbury from Vancouver, Washington, and I am on mission staff.
I'm Justin Hayes. I'm the Area Director in Clark County, which is in Vancouver, Washington.
And I am Julie Reeves, and I am the Area Director in East Portland.
So question number one is kind of there's a few different questions here that are all about contact work. In our current COVID culture, what does contact work look like? What are some ideas we can use in our own areas for contact work? And how much daily contact is reasonable in this next school year?
Well, I think contact work can look a lot of different ways. I think one, it has to do with what the state regulations are. And depending on that, I think that like people have been delivering doing Dutch deliveries like Dutch Brothers or BlackRock to their students and just having conversations in the driveway 6 feet apart. It can be taking student leaders along with you in your ministry, because student leaders are the ones who are going to still be spending time with their friends, and they can be inviting smaller groups and you guys can do stuff outside. I think it's when it starts to get rainy in Oregon that we're going to have to start becoming a little bit more creative.
Yeah, I think a lot of it is just being willing to overcome whatever is in front of you to go be with kids. When I first started doing Young Life, I remember just walking to school, sign in, get a badge, and then free to roam. And it was like, I came to Vancouver, we couldn't do that ever. And so we had to figure out a different way. And that meant sporting events or after school activities and things like that. So this is just another thing that you have to say, what do we have to overcome to be around and be with students? And I also think that means you really have to, with the kids you're in relationship with already, make the most of those opportunities to be with those kids and give yourself the freedom to say it's okay for a season to focus on the kids we know. And it's not going to necessarily look like it has before, showing up to the big event and having that, but to say, all of us can grow in those friendships and relationships. And that's contact work, being with students.
I think also it's important to know your community. I think what is acceptable in the city in Portland might be different in terms of what parents believe, what's okay or acceptable in a rural community. So whether it's sending out a survey to parents and seeing what they think is okay and what they consider safe. The safety of kids is the most important thing, and a lot of that is it changes depending on the mindset of the community. So I think it's important to know your own community.
I feel like even on that note, in combination with what Julie and Justin said, for a long time, I think we have leaned in Young Life on the structured, organized activities for contact work, whether that's games and events at school or going just to campus, chaperoning dances, whatever that may look like. But with that stripped away, I think we really do get to lean into the relational aspect of it. And so knowing kids, knowing their families, knowing their circumstances, in a way that if we say that Young Life is, we are a relational ministry, we don't need the events to do it. And so I think it's just knowing kids, reaching kids, just do it.
And I would also try to take advantage of the opportunities that online school might give you. If your community is doing online school, what kind of things would help with something like that? Do you do a midday brain break delivery of some sort, or do you do some sort of tutoring, or do you do some sort of help with students trying to take advantage of this is where they're at? How can we meet needs that they directly have from these circumstances and try to find opportunities? If you start to look at it that way, I think a lot of good ideas will start to come up to whether it's a study center or tutoring or whatever it is. You can start to say, hey, this is their reality. How can we meet them in the midst of this reality that they're going through?
I think it's important to remember kids don't have the activities that they usually have going on. And even though it's an unprecedented time, I think that we use that to our advantage of like kids are desperate for something to do and connection. And so we can look at this time as like, oh, wow, we have to overcome so much. Or we could look at this time as like, wow, we're not up against sports schedules and all the other stuff that's going on. And kids, it can be simplistic. It doesn't have to be a complicated event like you were saying, Matt. It can be just simple showing up and having conversations with kids.
I think related to that, what are you guys planning on doing for club in the fall?
The thing that we've said to our area is that you have to change the form of club fit a certain function. The function is to have a community, a place where students feel like they belong, a place where they can kind of let go of some of the stuff that's going on in the world, and to hear the gospel. All those things can still be done in a different form. What we have to do as staff is help our volunteer leaders, and what all our volunteer leaders need to do is probably become more comfortable with spiritual conversations that don't look like club talks. That's what counts in the Young Life form of club, is that you talk about the Lord. And so that's not most Young Life leaders' MO, is to hang out with guys, play basketball for a while, and then at the end be like, hey, real quick, I just want to talk to you about Jesus. But if they do that, that takes that event, which was a contact work event before, into a club event, because now you've shared the gospel. And so even if it's not the whole gospel or a talk, maybe it's just part of your testimony, but just becoming more familiar with part of my life is to have these conversations. And you still got to win the right to have that conversation. You don't do it the first time you meet somebody maybe, but eventually you have to start having those kind of conversations, and those can be what club looks like. It doesn't have to be that, like you said, it'll be different in every area, but those could be what club looks like.
And I don't even think the question is, what are you going to do for club? I think kind of piggybacking on what Matt said in terms of we're used to having a structure, but the idea is the question is, how are you going to keep reaching kids and telling them about Jesus? And so one of the ideas we had in smaller groups, obviously, but cabin time at the beach or cabin time at the mountain, and just smaller groups of kids where you go have a fun day, and then they know there's going to be a discussion about Jesus at some point. But yeah, it's going to look different. It's not about club anymore. It just isn't. It's about telling kids about Jesus and asking them where they're at, giving them the opportunity.
I think with our Capernaum Club that I'm a part of, we still acknowledge that we're a team. This is a team-based ministry. It's just that the team may not be together all at one time for club in a given week. There may be two members of the team gathering with a couple kids here, two members gathering on Thursday night, two team members gathering on Tuesday afternoon. But the team is still working to reach kids, and club, like you said, it's already been said, it's not going to look like 50 kids or 25 kids. It's going to be a smaller group, but the team is still going to be committed each week to bringing this gospel message of Christ's love to kids. That's how I would live it out. That's how our team is thinking about it.
In Tigard and Tualatin, I know that I am a volunteer leader at Tigard High School, and I know Tualatin's doing the same. We're doing a lot around micro events, and we lean heavily on campaigner students, like kids who are growing in discipleship and growing in their faith, to help us organize just little mini micro events where not only the leader gets to share about Jesus, but also that student is sharing. And so it can kind of be a hybrid of club and campaigners almost. And I think that we can take advantage of that as well, of having conversations about Christ, but also having conversations between a kid who's a growing believer in Christ, and a kid who maybe has never heard about Jesus in their life. And I think that's a sweet opportunity as well, to do just many events that maybe are planned by kids as well, and helping them grow in their leadership.
And I feel like the platform of club has always been the initial invite to a Young Life tagged thing after I meet a kid. So from that point, it was I'm Matt and I'm hanging out around games or schools or seeing them, whatever. And then it's come to Young Life Club. And so that's the first thing that hits them with well, what is this Young Life. So it's that initial invite. So I think it's whatever we decide to put together, whether it's a student leader that's inviting a new friend to a Young Life gathering, whatever that is, that's the first invite in to something that's, I guess, branching beyond just a relationship. You're not invited into this like community or club. Yeah.
I think we want to have every leader be able to share the gospel. And so my encouragement is don't leave this weekend without having that be something that you guys talk about. And even if it's just a really simple 4 or 5 step thing, or just a way that every leader in our region can share the gospel. We want to make sure that we have that sort of standard. Long question. There can potentially be a tension between deeper and growth. How are we directing resources and encouraging staff to go deeper with kids, while at the same time encouraging growth on an area level?
Why don't I talk about it from a regional level? Then we can maybe extrapolate to the area level. So as Young Life as an organization has come to acknowledge the challenges that the pandemic has brought upon us in terms of just being with kids. Young Life has said we are not measuring our outreach this year in the way we have in the past. Like in my role, I'm not being asked to put any numbers down for, okay, we're going to reach this many more kids this year than we did last year, or we're taking this many more kids to camp, or we want this many more kids in campaigners. We really have taken a sabbatical or a pause and said, it's sort of ridiculous to think about that in light of all that's going on in our world. And so we're really asking the question now, growth is really going to be measured in the depth of relationship and what is God doing in each of our own lives and in the lives of the kids that we know and the leaders that we know and the committee members that we know. It's going to be more, I think, less about numbers and more about this, maybe this internal work that God is doing in the midst of the pandemic.
Yeah, and I think if we're focusing in on doing that internal work, there's always a tension between growth and then going deeper. And I think that probably is where this question comes from. A lot of times is when we go deep, sometimes we feel like the natural repercussion is, oh, we may not grow, but it's actually the opposite. I think growth is a natural repercussion of when we choose to go deep. And I think this is the season, because of the limitations that we have with the pandemic, where we get to go deeper, and we can also trust God to grow the ministry in due time. And I think that if we focus on it that way and we look at it that way, God is going to bless it. It's not about like how many kids. I think it's how deep we go with kids and watching the overflow of what happens with that.
I mean, this is similar to what Erin said, but I just think when I look back over the years of Young Life ministry, there's a natural ebb and flow between kind of growth and then going deeper. And it's not something we choose. The Lord kind of, when you look back, you can't choose, okay, this is going to be a season of going deeper. It's just the kids in your ministry are ready to go deeper. And then you spend that season investing deeply in them, not forgetting about outreach, but recognizing this is going to be a season where we're going to go deep with these kids and they're going to learn how to live out their faith in their schools. And then you have a season of growth. And so I think it is just, in this time, we know what's happening because there's no other option. Then this is going to be a season of depth with kids. And when we embrace it, I think, like you said, the Lord is going to bless it. And we're going to see growth when we come out of this thing.
And I would just, the only thing I would add is, if you look in the book of Acts at the disciples' journeys, they're never more deeply connected to the Lord than when they're outgoing and going to places where they can connect and share with other people. The faith it requires to go to a person, build a relationship, and begin to tell that person about the Lord, it is a deepening experience that will deepen you in your relationship with Christ. No matter if you're a student leader, staff member, you've been a Young Life leader for 20 years, the courage it takes to say, Lord, I'm going to listen to you, and you're going to direct me to somebody, and I'm going to go to them. And that is growth, going to the next person. that will deepen your faith if you're listening to him and doing that. So I think they're hand in hand. They go together. And if you know, it might be a good thing to study Acts, you know, as an area or as a team, and just say, you know, how are they experiencing the Lord as they're going out and doing this? And they'll find that it's an incredible way. So.